Welcome to the 42nd episode of the We All Serve podcast. I am here with my brother and friend who is, as we were just joking off air, a little bit tan after last week. You've got your background back, which is cool, but
I did.
Not the weather. Angel, welcome back.
No, I got the weather back. Chicago weather, which is freezing and miserable and unhappy.
It's the greatest city on earth, right?
Yeah. Tina and I were just talking about that. She's like, I really like Chicago. Like for 1 month out of the year. And I'm like, yeah, it's about right.
There is like that brief period. My wife and I talk about it all the time, like Taste of Chicago. It's like, it's awesome. Like it's fun. It's great.
Yeah. The music festival at Pritzker Pavilion and the Latin dance they have all over the city. It's fantastic. It's really great. But, in the absence of that, bleh.
Yeah, well, Lori Lightfoot, if you are listening, you are welcome on. We're not making fun of your city.
I am.
Okay. Either way. No, it's awesome. Episode 42, and today's guest is going to be absolutely awesome. But before we talk about this week's guest, and I know we've got a couple of upcoming stuff going on. Let's talk about episode 43 next week with Saul Newton. You want to talk about Saul?
Yeah, Saul Newton is the executive director for Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce, Veteran Chamber of Commerce. And what they do is they get all the veteran businesses together throughout the entire state and people that want to be affiliated. It's not just a regular Chamber of Commerce. It's, circled around veteran and whole ecosystem. I think they have like 3,200 members in the state. It's crazy, and they all just kind of share that bond and trust, and it's really exciting to have Saul on. And he's such a giving person, and he does so much for the community inside the state and outside the state. And he's really taught me a lot about how to unite people in the business.
I'm super excited for that conversation because it combines my two passions, obviously around veterans and of course small business. So it's gonna be an awesome conversation. For all of our and cheese. Okay, no, it just came through what you just said. Okay, there we go. But for all of our listeners, you will miss. I'm sort of learning this whole psychology piece. You will miss the conversation with Saul Newton unless you press that subscribe button
and share and all that other fun stuff. You gotta share, you gotta save it, you gotta subscribe, you gotta phone a friend, all that stuff.
Yeah. It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's you get all those lifelines, which is good. So
how are things going out there in Texas?
It's good. Everything's bigger.
It is. Well, one thing we're doing that's in conjunction with Fort Hood and it's happening across the nation is I'm affiliated with, I do some work with LULAC, which is League of United Latin American Citizens, and they're doing a big national vigil to honor and take pause to acknowledge specialist Vanessa Guillen, who was murdered a year ago today, actually. And obviously today is kind of the remembrance is kind of eclipsed by the whole Chauvin and George Floyd event. But they pushed it off for like 2 days. So it's going to be on Thursday and around the country. They're going to do a sunset event where people around the country in LA, Phoenix, and Chicago, we're going to be doing an event at sunset over at the Hermosa station. We're going to have a lot of military leaders attending that event, and just take a minute to pause and say, this is a big deal. This is a really, really important thing to acknowledge that we lost one of our own.
Where can people learn about the event? That's so important. I've gotten a little bit involved with the LULAC chapter out here near Fort Bliss. It's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah, you can go to LULAC, National LULAC chapter. It's all over their site. But the Chicago event came across because they reached out to me today, actually, and it's like, how can we put this together? And I might know a guy or two, and I might have a friend in my Rolodex if they still have Rolodexes. And we were able to put together something pretty solid pretty quickly. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be at the Hermosa metro train station where they have a big Army Buccaneers mural, and we're going to do it there. And it seems like the best spot to do it, and invite a bunch of folks.
That's awesome. Well, I hope everybody can participate out there, and that's awesome that you're doing it. And indeed, I was actually just listening this morning to NPR, and as they were talking about Vanessa Guillen, And I believe they just, I think today, dedicated one of the gates there at Fort Hood in her memory. And, I know that the family has mixed emotions as that gate was dedicated.
Sure.
I mean, obviously realizing the military has a problem. The military has a problem. And I know here at Fort Bliss, I know we are getting after it. But there is a problem. And, for the family to go through what they have gone through, it's tragic.
The search, her missing all those weeks or months or whatever. I can't even imagine. I mean, take it so long to have closure on your daughter. As a father, I can't even fathom it.
And we have to learn a lesson. And that's the only. And I know that's where the family is coming from. Of, we have to learn a lesson, and we have to learn from our mistakes, because there were mistakes. Learn from the lack of oversight, and frankly, the way I see it, it's a lack of being in touch with what is going on, and that happens at the lowest possible level. So
yeah, well, at the highest possible level, I was talking to the leadership at LULAC today, and they're actually meeting with the Secretary of Defense next month, and the assistant assistant Secretary of Defense, and they're really looking hard, and they're advocating, working together collaboratively to develop solutions that can not just honor her memory, but fix the problem that went into the systemic problem that went into losing such a wonderful soldier.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll continue this conversation, but how important that we're having this conversation today. And obviously we encourage everybody participate in the event, whether it's in Chicago, LULAC, or around the country. There will be many observances, many opportunities. And bottom line, it's all, as we always say on this pod, it's all about we all serve. It's all about continuing to serve and continuing to make a difference. And that's what it's all about. So obviously that is the strongest message. If you remember only one thing from this conversation, it's to step up, and step up indeed. Our guest does that on a daily basis. There she is.
She stepped into Cabo. I'll tell you that much. She stepped up and took me to a really nice restaurant, and they put us in a wine cellar kind of thing. It was amazing.
Angel, I was trying to start on a very serious and somber note, and you just lighten the mood. But no, it's so funny. It's so coincidental that you guys are out there. So let me just briefly introduce our amazingly accomplished guest, Monica McNeal, who's a nationally renowned veteran military family advocate. Now, Angel, you've been talking about Monica for a long time, so it's awesome that you were able to snag her on the program. In addition to being Gold Star mother, she's held key executive leadership roles at many companies, and has focused her talents and utilized her leadership skills as an advocate and a navigator for Microsoft. As a contractor on the Microsoft Military Affairs team, she's a program manager and supports the Military Spouse Technology Academy. Also, as the National Operations and West Coast Program Director of FourBlock, a military veteran career readiness nonprofit. Monica sits on a member of Congress's Veteran Task Force, volunteers with the King County Veteran Consortium. So many organizations, which I know we're going to talk about throughout this conversation, and serving as, I believe this is still accurate, 7th term as the president of the Washington State American Gold Star Mothers, and 2nd term as the district president of the American Gold Star Mothers of Washington, Alaska, and Oregon. Amazing. And Monica, you certainly personify and exemplify giving and serving on a daily basis. So welcome to the pod. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. And obviously my condolences go out to all the families, because as you know, one death in the military extends into many families. And so that one death could affect 15, 20 people down the line. So our condolences always go out to all the families, and the cause of death, it doesn't matter, it's death. So that's all that matters to us.
Yeah, someone passed it. That's serious. One thing I want to start off with, and it's just the easiest thing to address, because if anybody doesn't know what a Gold Star mother is, Monica, could you explain to us what a Gold Star mother is, please?
Sure. There's well, we'll start with the American Gold Star Moms. Was started in 1928, so it is an official organization for Gold Star moms to gather, and it's a service organization very similar to a VFW. So we get together and we serve veterans and military families, usually in honor of our child. The DoD has the Gold Star family mom, and then there's also the next of kin. But at the end of the day, we are all Gold Star families, and how your child was left this earth, if it was by accident, homicide, killed in action, physical. I mean, we have many Gold Star parents whose child had a heart attack while doing PT.
Oh, no kidding.
So that is, really a definition that our child died while in service is probably the best, broadest definition of what that is.
Is there a differentiator between if you're a reservist or active duty, or just because I was wondering, like, if someone's like in their civilian job and their civilian job's like jumping out of building stuff, but on the weekends they're like a service member, are they still Gold Star?
That's a slippery slope because the DoD has their definition, the national organization has their definition. Many of the local chapters, we have all Gold Star moms, not a specific definition, can participate in all of our activities. So the DoD has some restrictions on time period that they consider it a true Gold Star family. Unlike KIA is automatic Gold Star. It depends who's defining it. It's a little squishy, and I'm sorry I'm being a little vague. But
you're not.
What the national
right.
organization says, it's kind of like, can you belong to the VFW if you never served out of country? So there is some guidelines there.
Yeah, I think it's great that regardless of the circumstances of condition, you're still talking about a mother or a family member that's lost their children, and it's just the most unnatural, horrible thing. So I think people just getting together and being that support for each other is probably the most important thing. And delineating, differentiating is such, I won't call it petty, but yeah, it's petty. and one thing that really struck me when we met years ago when I went through the FourBlock program, which we'll talk about that in a minute, is you told me you people naturally have an uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable when you say you're a ghost. Someone says they're a Gold Star mother. We all, oh, and you get kind of quiet and really, and stand up. And what you taught me, and I think it was, it might have been General Petraeus, I think it was, and Leon Panetta. That's what it was, Leon Panetta. He told me, he's like, what the best thing you can do is ask them about their child. And I'd like you to talk about that, because if this show does nothing else, is to educate people, and you educated me, and since then I've talked to multiple Gold Star family members, and it's a completely different conversation once we do what you tell me.
Okay. Well, I guess the most current war affects very few families. I mean, it wasn't a draft situation. It was all volunteer force. Granted, the war has gone on for 20 years, but not like in World War II, where almost every neighborhood was affected. Every family member, every household probably had someone who served at one point. So what a Gold Star family, we'll use mom for right this second, many people across the country knew, because everyone had a child serving. If you've ever seen the banner of that blue star flag hanging in the window, that started during the war. And once someone passed away, they would take a Gold Star and actually sew it on top of the blue star, so everyone in the neighborhood would know that they lost a child. And so that Gold Star of what is a Gold Star kind of lost, thank goodness, steam on when we're in peacetime, during Cold War. People just didn't associate what a Gold Star is. When my son is enrolled in the Marines, I didn't know what a Gold Star was. I had no idea. I hardly knew what a Blue Star was. So it wasn't just common knowledge, because it was not everyone served. So if we have less than 1% of our nation serving in a volunteer force, it's just not common knowledge. So our opportunity is to continue to educate people. And the best way of doing that is doing things like this, sharing what a Gold Star is, being out in the community. And I'll give you a really bad example, but it's a good example. A high-ranking Air Force officer, when he was introduced to myself, another Gold Star wife, and one more Gold Star wife, so there's 3 Gold Stars there, he said, "Congratulations," because gold often means, "Hey, you got a Gold Star. You're a good mom. Way to go." And he had no idea. And he's an officer in one of the branches of our armed services.
Some staff member let him down woefully.
I grabbed his handler
I would fire
later.
my flag aide in a second.
Yes, one of the younger Gold Star wives was ready to kill him, so I went over and talked to his handler and said, "You have to educate," but it's not common knowledge. And not that these are every good numbers, but you got to think Vietnam War, there was like 58,000 people killed. Afghanistan and Iraq were right about 7,800. So the multitude of that education is not there. But as we get to, share our story, I'm going to circle back to where you're at, talk about our children, get out in front of schools and organizations to talk about what a Gold Star is, then it just continues to educate. So I don't hold anything back against people because, like I said, when Eric was killed, I finally learned what a Blue Star was. I had put that flag in our window. After Eric was killed, in the old days, I would have hand sewn something, but it's much easier today. I was able to buy a Gold Star flag and hang that in our window. So it's an education process. And, thank goodness we don't have 58,000 Gold Star moms from this war. That's the good news.
That is less than horrible news.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's good. It's less than horrible. But the one thing that really sticks out is that you mentioned to me was when someone tells you that they're a Gold Star mother, someone is, ask them. And this is lesson number 1. Ask them about their child. People want to talk about their child. When they're asked, they're not ashamed of it. They're proud of their child. Afford them the opportunity to speak about their child because that came from them, and that's something that they want to share because as long as that story remains, their child still lives.
Exactly. To be able to talk about our child and our children, it allows us to also help in the grieving process because we have moms who, do I say I have one child or do I say I have 3 kids? Once a child left, do you say you're a mom of 1 or 2? What was beforehand? So even moms have a hard time saying that they had a child because, if I say I had a child killed in Afghanistan, well, then everyone really knows the situation. But to be able to talk and, we never want anyone to ever forget all of our children. We don't want that to happen. And, I've had my personal mission here. As long as I'm living on this earth, I will talk about Eric because it's an opportunity to share something about all of you veterans and active duty who are willing to put your name on that paycheck if something could happen. So that part of it is it's a good chance for moms to tell their story because we don't want anyone to forget my son. I don't want to forget what my son sounds like. I want to remember his voice.
And you don't spare any details. You specifically over dinner told me about your son wearing his girlfriend's bikini. I remember that story. I went, still awkward. Oh, Monica.
Thanks. Well, that's what you do when you're in Mexico as a young adult, I guess.
So, Monica, I appreciate what Angel was just saying and all kidding aside, that you are so willing to share, and share is something that I know is not unique to you. It's common to many or all Gold Star families, maybe moms in particular. So I actually want to talk about some of the things that you have done both professionally as well as philanthropically and volunteer, because military has been if you Google Monica McNeal, you will see everything that you are involved in. How did that start? Was it a direct connection with Eric, or did that happen on its own?
No, that was a direct connection with Eric. As all of you that served out of country, you have to go, you come home, you do all that important paperwork. And my son was adamant that he speaks to an attorney for, a young boy at that age. You want to make sure things were really in good place. And then he left in an envelope 3 things that he would like me to do. The first one was to help a homeless vet get a job. So I worked with local nonprofit here, and we found this vet. We got him. He was living underneath the bridge in Redmond, Washington. And we were able to get him a job at the deli at Safeway. He wanted to continue to live underneath the bridge, so we cut a deal with the hotel, kind of kitty corner down the street. He was able to sleep under the bridge where he wanted to call home. He took a shower at the hotel, and then he walked over to the deli. And that was really in partnership with all those great VSOs that are out there helping definitely veterans, and they're filling a huge void there. So that was one thing Eric asked me to do. The other thing he asked me to do is to do what I do in corporate America, but do it for veterans. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it gave me an opportunity. I transitioned for about 2.5 years to figure out what that really means. And I decided that I would leave my corporate job and jump 2 feet and more than that into this veteran space as a veteran advocate. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that happened. And the third thing I won't be able to accomplish until I retire. But, you know, that's that piece of paper that he wanted to share with me. And, you know, like all good parents, I put it in my safety deposit box. I never thought I'd have to open that safety deposit box to, you know, do his last will and wishes. So that was kind of how I jumped in the space. I am a daughter of a veteran, but he had already, he was done with his service by the time I was born. My brother, who Angel met in Mexico, he served in the Air
Force. He worked at Air Force One during the Reagan years, I think. It was great.
Yes. Yeah. And so I kind of grew up with military, but I never grew up as a military, you know, sibling and having to move like, you know, most people do today. But that's kind of how that all started. And I kind of, like I said, I jumped in 2 feet and more. So it's been a real good ride.
2 feet? You've jumped in like you've dived into the ocean with it, and we are so grateful, and everybody benefits from it, which is awesome. So can we talk a little bit more about the impact and sort of the stories you've heard, maybe from some of your networking with other Gold Star moms and families? Tell us, bottom line, what are some of the challenges that you're hearing? Again, what you have gone through is unfathomable and honestly, in many ways, unrelatable. But you have banded together, and it's not just in the immediate loss, but no doubt I know Eric is I'm sure you're thinking of Eric, obviously, as we have this conversation, but not an hour passes. Tell us, what are some of the things that Gold Star families want, need, or are doing in continuing to serve?
It's an unbelievable group of women who really get out there and make a difference. You know, some real simple things. Like right now in Washington, we are doing a veterans village down in southern, right, kind of where the Tacoma area in south of Seattle. And 32 veteran villages are being built. Our chapter alone did 32 sets of bedding, their pillows, sheets, everything. So when these veterans move into this tiny village, they will have their beds all done with brand new bedding, pillows, comforters, and they're all done Americana style. So that's giving back to that population of veterans. We have moms who volunteer at the VA all the time. We have moms who volunteer at the VA hospitals. That is a real easy thing if proximity is good. We also serve meals on kind of like on the holidays. We do that. We are part of many of the service organizations events on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. We also, like we did paint kits. We put together paint therapy for the Red Cross for veterans to go out and they paint as part of their therapy, and they're the ones who are at the nursing home. So we put together, I don't know, like 75 kits of paint, so that way they can help, you know, their therapy, but through painting. We recently have, we've painted veterans' homes. We have helped get ramps built. We'll hear a veteran needs a ramp. So we will work with a little name drop here with Home Depot because they do such a great job, and I'm sure Lowe's and the other ones do the same. But we are able to identify veterans who maybe need some help in that aspect. Connecting of resources. We have moms who volunteer at many of the VSOs that are out there to help veterans connect with resources. You guys know this. Many veterans don't ever want to get a rating. They never want to walk into the VA. Hopefully that is changing with the post 9/11 veterans also. But you know, one mom drives veterans to the VA. She just picks them up and says, "We're going," and off they go. Awesome. So, you know, it's definitely a service organization. We do a hero tree in 6 different malls here in Washington, and we have pictures of our fallen on a hero tree during the holidays, so people can come by, look at that face, put a name and a face together, and, help educate, once again, that mall shopper. So, like I said, it's a service organization. So we're trying to do some really big things as long as it's about veterans and military families. And then I'll be the first one to tell you, during COVID, we had a Gold Star mom who actually went homeless. And we were able to do some immediate fundraising. We were able to pay off her car because she was living in her car. And then we got her enough money to get first and last month's rent. And now we're working on getting her supplies. So we have to take care of our own also. Because this tragedy that happens in our lives affects, like I said, the entire family. And many moms have a hard time recovering because, just as in the service or within the veterans, you have to seek help. And there's limited help, where you live, etc. So, we just really try to keep giving back and making sure that we're out there in the community supporting the people who, we're side by side with our children.
One thing, thank you. That was fantastic, and it really resonated with me about how people, and I'm sure you guys have resources dealing with depression and coping, providing coping mechanisms and having that infrastructure, that family, having a new family that comes out of the service member you lost. One thing that just kind of rings in my head every time I look at Monica is I think about when we met, first of all, we only met once in person ever. But you would never guess it because we've been best friends forever, and through FourBlock. I think we met through FourBlock.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Rader, who was an alum, he was with FourBlock. He was very important. He introduced me to Monica, or Monica introduced me to him. I can't remember which. And then she introduced me to Joe Wallace, who was our podcast guest. And we would have these talks where I'd pick up the phone and call Monica and say, "Hey, what's going on with this and this and this?" And our ecosystem, our network ecosystem, is massive. I mean, huge. You can't pick up a phone and like, if I don't know somebody, she knows somebody. So knows somebody who knows somebody. It's all about, and that's why I want her on the podcast so bad, is because it's all about giving. It's never the conversation is, I need this. It's always, what can I do for you? And giving so much. And with if you could talk a little bit about FourBlock and some of the things that you did there, and what you're continuing to do with Microsoft, with the military spouses, which I think is fantastic.
Okay. Well, FourBlock, if you don't know the organization, it's phenomenal. It helps veterans transition. And I was hired here to open up the Seattle course, and it is just an unbelievable program. It's anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks, depends where you are geographically. And it's with Columbia University's curriculum on how to be career ready. So we meet on site prior to COVID, and we would meet at different corporations. And this gives the veteran opportunity to meet at corporations, meet ERG leaders. One veteran goes, "I'm just happy I know how to drive in Seattle, and I know how to go up and down elevators." So whatever that skill is, it makes them feel a little bit more civilianized as they're transitioning, is a great organization to go through. And right now it's online, and no one guarantees jobs. We just make sure you're career ready from all that steps, from that first elevator pitch until that very end, on how to ace the interview to your first 90 days in a job. So it just becomes this really great process. And I think the secret sauce, hands down, is meeting at different corporations. So you're able to go into a KPMG office or Accenture office and meet with people who probably were veterans themselves, because a lot of the veteran ERGs really come out to support when we're in the company. And during that time, we went from one program here in the Seattle market, and then when I left, we had 11 different programs going on Mississippi West. So it was easy to sell this to so many communities because it's the right thing to do, and it gives this veteran this one-on-one connection, which, Angel, this is so important. If you can say somebody at a company, it's one step easier to get a job at that company because you have a connection, hopefully a referral. So that was really my first step into the veteran communities with FourBlock.
And now you're working with military spouses with Microsoft. Let's talk about that a little bit.
It's a great program. It's part of their military affairs team. It's called MSTA, for Military Spouse Technology Academy. You probably know MSSA, and that's the one that's been for veterans. And that too is changed.
That's free now, isn't it?
Yes, it is free. Microsoft is 100% underwriting MSSA. The good or bad news on this one, MSTA is taking a shift. So they're going to work on a different program for military spouses. As we all know, military spouses, their first and foremost job is to support their spouse who is active duty in their family. And so Microsoft is not offering that course going forward, but they are looking at other opportunities to continue with the military family, which is the spouse, who often is the backbone and holds the family together through the transitioning or active duty person is, doing their job up until the very end. So
that's
it's
the hardest
a great
job in the
program.
military, is military spouse.
Yeah, it is more than a full-time job.
And it's thankless. It's so thankless.
I will share with the military spouses that I've been able to work with, highly educated, highly trained, highly motivated. They are just right for the right companies who could adjust with their schedule, because many of them cannot just work a traditional 9-to-5 job. So remote work has been really wonderful for many of the military spouses, and that way they can take that job. Because if you look at their resumes, they have holes in them because they have to often most PCS with their spouse, and then they have to start all over, start a new job. And state governments now are starting to take licenses and transfer them from state to state, which is such a huge win. So if you're a dental hygienist in one state, you can be a dental hygienist in another state and not get recertified. So that's been a huge step, and that's all kind of happened in the last 9 months. So that's really exciting news for the military family, because civilians, we need 2 incomes. I'm not sure why people don't think the military needs 2 incomes.
Yeah, it's awesome advocacy that you're doing, and I know I briefly touched on it in your bio, but I know that you are serving on many advisory committees for your member of Congress, and I know that impact. I saw an article about your Congress member interviewing you, so that's pretty exciting, and you're advocating.
Well, you did some digging.
That's what I do. Absolutely. I try to prepare for these conversations. But in preparation, I did do a lot of research into the many, many, many organizations that you are involved in. So I know, Angel, you and Monica have talked a little bit about FourBlock, and I think this has come up in previous conversations as well. So obviously, we encourage veterans and really everybody, employers, obviously check out FourBlock.org. And Monica, you mentioned earlier, and I sort of feel like I'm doing a slideshow over here. We mentioned earlier your involvement in leadership on a regional and on a national level with Gold Star Moms, which is so important. So obviously, we encourage everybody to get on these websites to show support. And finally, Vets in Tech. Monica, you want to tell us a little bit about Vets in Tech?
I found a few hours a week to do some more volunteering. I am in love with this organization. It's a nonprofit, and they actually had their big summit last Saturday. And this organization, they also do military spouses. Their name doesn't say it, but they also do military spouses, and you can get trained up in computer courses for free. And at the conference, most of the large tech companies were represented. You get an opportunity to speak with the recruiters, but they don't just stop there. I mean, they make sure that they're kind of carrying your way all the way to employment. And that's just a really good organization. So I've just been doing some fun projects for them. And, once again, it's kind of that Vets in Tech, and also how to expose and take the mystery out of how to get in the tech industry. And they spent a lot of time talking about that on Saturday, as, demystifying tech. And that, I think, is really important, because there's a lot of there's a lot of jobs in tech that are not technical. And so there's an opportunity to get hired in a non-technical field. Not everyone has to be a programmer. So,
Monica, my last question for you, and I asked this of many of the veterans that come on the podcast.
You're only the second non-veteran we've ever had on here. Yeah. I just want to let you know that.
Absolutely, but my point being over here is that Monica is, again, exemplifying everybody that we bring on. When we had Jimmy V on the other week, these are people that are truly making a massive outsized sort of influence within the veteran community. So Monica, I ask this question all the time of veterans and anybody that puts the uniform on, regardless of branch of service. Who is that role model, that sort of best friend, greatest mentor? And I ask that question of you, and both for you to respond in your capacity in service, but also for Eric, and in any of the stories that you can share. Who can you point to, and who can we give a shout out to of somebody that has made an impact?
I'm going to go back to, her name is Marty Wickstrom. I spent 24 years at Nordstrom, and she was a VP when I was hired. And she always told me let's start with Nordstrom. You get hired because you're a nice person. That's really what you do. They tell you your name's outside the door, so act like and work like you own the place. So that's what you do. And then she always told me to keep my ear to the ground. And what I've learned from that, if you're a good listener, you can really learn a lot. So I've had the opportunity last year, I mentored 320 different individuals, and most of them were anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. And what you can do, if you really listen, you can really help somebody. And even, if it's a one connection to somebody else that they can talk to, if it's a social service that they can talk to, that happens. I mean, most of the veterans I speak with, it starts with one situation and it just multiplies. All of a sudden you find out they need something else. And to be able to be that connector, that's where Marty, she just was always about just keep your ear to the ground and listen. Because if you're really listening, you're going to hear probably the real situation and not some surface, everything's fine. Well, we know that's probably not fine. So it's really spending that time listening, and she's just an absolutely wonderful woman and has retired from Nordstrom a long time ago. But she was definitely someone who really helped mold and shape how I think and how I act, I believe. I'll give her all that.
Thank you.
So she retired, so I can't get a discount there anymore.
No, and even if you have to work there, if you give your discount to your friends, you actually get terminated. So many people don't do that. We like our jobs there.
I make it like a day. and they wouldn't hire me because I'm not nice. So there's that.
Well, it's much easier to be nice, trust me. So that's
they say your name's on the door, and they're telling me no, you're on the outside of the door, buddy. Monica, thank you so much for everything you do. I love you, and your friendship means everything to me. And for the things you do to educate me, and my next career option that's coming up here on Monday is largely due to my relationship with you. So thank you so much for everything.
Well, thank you.
And for not getting me in trouble in Cabo. I really appreciate you making sure I didn't get roofied. That was cool.
Well, thank you. And this was, my pleasure to, educate a few more people on what a Gold Star mom is, what Gold Star family is. And, it's my way to give back. I chose not to serve, and anything I can do for a veteran and military family helps me heal and helps me be a better person. And when someone asks what can they do to pay it, I just say pay it forward. So just like you two are doing, paying it forward and helping veterans out there and military families, I think that's what everyone needs to do as they choose to leave active duty and get back to the community.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for all that you do continue to do. We'll certainly continue to keep our audience informed on everything that you are doing and any events in any way that people can support. We look forward to spreading the word. So thank you. And obviously I guess I'll just use this as a shameless plug. We can't keep you informed unless you're pressing subscribe, rating, reviewing, and sharing.
Okay.
And liking it a lot. Like it a lot.
Like it a lot, because next week we've got Saul Newton.
We do. It's exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Well, definitely tune in next week. Monica, thank you again. And to all of our audience listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 43 of We All Serve will be back next Tuesday. Until then, have a good night.